Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the first in what promises to be an endless series of cocaine hippos. That is, projects that are done just because they can, not because they should. In the same way that cocaine baron Pablo Escobar imported 4 hippos for his private zoo in Colombia, from whence they escaped, reproduced, and now hundreds ravage the Colombian countryside. Well, we're in the same situation. And today's cocaine hippo is this. Shostakovich Symphony No. 10, featuring Santtu-Matias Rouvali. I look at this. We're on a first-name basis with these people. This is an English thing, I think. You know, the Halle Orchestra is now just Halle. Anything that has more than 2 syllables seems to be more than the music-going public can actually handle. And maybe that's true over there. I don't know, but it's, you know, I find something just absolutely screwed up about this. I really do. I can't help it. Anyway, Santtu-Matias Rouvali on Philharmonia's own label, speaking of things that they do because they can, not because they should, is conducting Shostakovich's 10th Symphony. This is a completely ordinary, uninteresting performance at every single level. I mean, he conducts it, but he doesn't feel it. It has no bite. It has no attack. It has no excitement. It has no power or force or living energy. I mean, is it live? I mean, it must be. It must be live, because that's all they do, these people. Anyway, let's get to the details, shall we? The first movement is well, you know, it's marked moderato, so it has to move. It has to flow. There are dead spots here. It starts off well enough. I mean, it moves along sort of, kind of. And then, you know, it's a perfect sonata form. It has 2 subjects. You know, the first, it involves that lovely clarinet tune. Ya, da, 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 da. You know, it goes like that. And then the second is the limping little waltz thing. And then it builds to that huge climax. That's Shostakovich's version of sonata form. He takes it from the first movement of Tchaikovsky's 4th Symphony, where you've got a development section that just builds up to this enormous climax, which spills over into a fortissimo onslaught of the recapitulation. And then for all the way on to the second subject. It's one of the greatest passages Shostakovich ever wrote. It really is. It's music that moves on the one hand. It has this real symphonic impetus. It's so goal directed on the one hand. On the other hand, it's so emotionally affecting. I mean, there's just this sense of grim determination, of destiny, of slogging on through all adversity. It's an extraordinary passage when other people do it. Excuse me. Allergy season. Isn't it wonderful? Anyway, when other people do it. And it's just unbelievable how ordinary this is. You know, you've got that big climax with the horns going, da, da, the tam-tam crash, but you hear it all. It's all nice and clear. But that whole other passage is based on even notes. Da, 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 do, 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 do. I mean, they're just sawing away at it. It has to be shaped. It has to be given, you know, dynamic nuance, and there has to be phrasing, and they're just playing it. They're all just picking up a paycheck. That's the bottom line. That's the first movement. Second movement, the portrait of Stalin. Can it possibly be fast or vicious enough? No. Is this fast or vicious enough? Hell no. Holy cow. I mean, everything in this movement is accented. It's forceful. Chunk, chunk, cha-cha-chunk, cha-cha-chunk, chunk, chunk. Oh, no, here it's just jump, jump, da-da-da, da-da-da, dum, dum, do 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 do. It's like it's like you expect like a line of chorus girls to come out high kicking. It's just not right. It's not horrible in the sense that they're playing the notes. They're more or less playing notes, but the dynamic range could be more. The accents could be punchier and more forceful. I mean, there's just so much more that they should be giving if they gave a damn about what they were doing. That's what it really boils down to. Now, the third movement is very tough to bring off. It really is because, it's marked Allegro. Here it takes about 13 minutes. That's actually kind of normal. But the opening is so droopy. Oh my God. Da, 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 bum, 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 bum. Everything has to have tension. There's always in Shostakovich this undercurrent of anxiety, of menace. He was a neurotic, soccer-addicted chain smoker. If I don't hear neurotic, soccer-addicted chain smoker, even in the quiet bits, then something isn't right. It just isn't right. The horns play very well in there. Da, 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 da. They're doing their thing there. But God, the movement dies. It just dies. It's the death of 1,000 cuts. And then the finale. Well, the finale is kind of interesting. The introduction flows nicely because that could also sort of lay there, But when the Allegro comes in, it's taken at a somewhat deliberate tempo. At first, I liked it. I liked it because you hear a lot of detail. You hear sort of the rhythmic underpinning of the melody and its accompaniments, and it's interesting to hear it done that way. It allows the various tunes to have a little bit more character, which is so sorely lacking everywhere else in the performance. But as it builds, it doesn't. It just doesn't build. If you're going to do it that way, you still got to be able to create that rush when we get to the big climax, when Stalin gets swatted down by Shostakovich's own motive. Da, 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 crash, tam, tam, pow. It's got to be hair-raising. Well, I don't have a lot of hair, but the hairs that I do have need to be raised, and they just aren't. The sound is good. It's just an ordinary workaday, completely unspecial performance. It is, in short, a cocaine hippo. It's just out there because they have to release something. And this guy, he's doing a lot of stuff. And I have heard very, very little, a couple Sibelius titles maybe, that have impressed me. I'm not saying he can't do it, but so far he hasn't. And what's very interesting is that because of the nature of the industry, of what's happening now, he's got an orchestra. The orchestra has a label. The label has to make recordings. Someone has to decide what's going to get recorded and what isn't. And they have to know what's going to be really good and what isn't, what has a chance of being really extraordinary. What can he do? What does he do well? Who will work with him to allow him to show himself in the best possible light with the music where you can tell that he feels something as opposed to this? I don't know. I don't know if any of that is going to happen, if it's even possible with today's economic situation and the way that recordings are made, with nobody who runs artists and repertoire, with nobody who sees these people and says to them, you can do this, you can do it really well. That, no, forget it. It's not going to happen. He's young, he's starting out. I remember, actually, it's a very interesting correspondence. One of the earliest recordings that Simon Rattle made was also Shostakovich 10 with the Philharmonia. And I liked it, actually. At the time, I thought it was pretty good. There were fewer Shostakovich 10s out there, so there was less competition. I may have been overly enthusiastic. I'd have to go back and check. But the interesting thing about that recording is that it was missing about 10 bars in the first movement. It was really strange. I reviewed it, I think, for Fanfare magazine back in the day. But it was one of those really strange experiences where it was very well edited together. You couldn't tell anything was missing unless you were following it with a score. You knew the piece really well. And I had my score in front of me, and all of a sudden, looking at it moving along, and all of a sudden, it's over there. And I was still over here. I thought I'd had like an epileptic seizure or something, that I'd blacked out, because all of a sudden it was magical. We were further along than we should have been. I think they fixed it eventually, but Shostakovich 10 seems to be one of those pieces, maybe that young conductors at the Philharmonia decide they need to do because it's not the fifth, because the competition isn't quite as strong and it's not as well known, and so they can maybe get away with it. You're not going to get away with it. We're not going to let them get away with it, are we? So, cocaine hippos to the fore. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.